Chapter 1: The Move. When Sarah first suggested moving into her childhood home, I was hesitant. The house stood on a quiet hill just outside of town, a red brick colonial with faded shutters and a wraparound porch that still creaked when you stepped onto it. It wasn't in bad shape, just untouched. Like time had been politely ignored within its walls. Dust settled in the corners like it had rights, and the wallpaper in the upstairs hallway still had the same faded floral print from the 1980s. It was her family's legacy, she told me. Passed from her grandparents to her parents, then locked up when her mother passed away a few years ago. It's silly to keep paying rent when this place is just sitting here, she said, running her fingers along the rusting banister during one of our first visits. It's just waiting for life to come back to it. I agreed. In theory, it made sense. Financially, it was a dream. No mortgage, no rent, just repairs and upkeep. Besides, Sarah's eyes lit up when she walked through those rooms. She'd point to a scuff on the floor and say, "That's where my brother tripped chasing me," or smile at a dent in the kitchen counter. My mom used to set the hot pot there, even though she wasn't supposed to. But there was a silence about the basement. Every time we passed the narrow door tucked beside the pantry, she brushed past it quickly like it didn't matter. I asked her once, just casually, "Is that where the laundry is?" She paused for a beat too long, then gave a tight smile. "Yeah. Just storage now, though. I haven't been down there in years." She didn't offer to open the door. I let it go. Why wouldn't I? Old houses have weird basements. I figured maybe it was musty or full of spiders, and she didn't want to deal with it. We moved in mid-September. The house was still warm from the tail end of summer, but there was a crispness in the air at night, that early autumn kind that makes you pull the blanket up higher while you sleep. We spent the first week cleaning, unpacking boxes, rearranging furniture. Sarah was happier than I'd seen her in months. She played music while we worked, laughed at old photos we pulled from drawers, and even found one of her childhood diaries buried in her closet. It felt wholesome, safe, like we were stepping into a storybook life. The first night we slept there, I woke around 3 a.m. to find her standing by the bedroom window. She was just staring out, her silhouette dim in the moonlight. "Hey," I whispered, groggy. "You okay?" She didn't answer at first. Then, without turning around, she said softly, "I forgot how dark it gets out here. Do you want me to get up?" I asked. She turned then, smiled faintly. "No. I'm fine. Just couldn't sleep." She slid back into bed and wrapped herself around me. Her skin felt colder than it should have been. I didn't think anything of it. Not then. It wasn't until the third night that I noticed the creaking. The floorboards in the hallway groaned. A slow, steady rhythm like someone walking. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Just pacing. I reached for my phone. 2:14 a.m. "Babe." I mumbled. "Did you hear that?" Sarah stirred beside me, mumbling something incomprehensible. I waited, eyes wide in the dark, holding my breath. The creaking stopped. Maybe old houses settle, I told myself. That's a thing, right? Wood expands, contracts. All totally normal. Still, the next morning I asked her, casually over coffee, "Did you get up last night?" She blinked. "No." "Why?" I shrugged. "Heard some floorboards creaking. Thought maybe you couldn't sleep again." She gave a small, puzzled shake of her head. "No. Slept through the night." She didn't ask any questions, didn't seem unnerved. So again I let it go. But something had shifted. I couldn't quite name it. The way her voice echoed slightly in the kitchen, or how the air felt just a bit cooler in the hallway, even when the heat was on. The house didn't feel dangerous. Not yet. Just slightly off. Like a song played half a beat out of rhythm. By the end of our first week, the pacing started again. But this time, it didn't stop in the hallway. It moved toward the basement door. And this time, I wasn't sure it was just floorboards. Chapter 2. The door that wasn't meant to open. The next night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of anything I could prove, just that strange sense, that crawling pressure in your chest that makes your heart beat too loud in the silence. The creaking came again, faint but deliberate, like someone walking barefoot down the hall just outside our door. I lay there, frozen, my eyes fixed on the bedroom ceiling. Then I heard it, the soft, low squeal of a door hinge. Not our bedroom door. One farther down the hallway. The basement. I got out of bed, careful not to wake Sarah. She was curled on her side, breathing evenly, her hand tucked beneath her cheek like a child. Peaceful. Undisturbed. The hallway was dark. I didn't turn on the lights. Not at first. I just listened. Nothing. Then I walked, each step deliberate, my footfalls landing between the old floorboard creaks I'd memorized over the last few days. I reached the kitchen and stared at the door to the basement. It was ajar, maybe a few inches. That was impossible. I'd checked it earlier that day. It was shut. I hadn't touched it. My fingers brushed the doorknob. It was cold. I swallowed and eased the door open. A moan of ancient hinges echoed into the space below. I flipped the light switch. A single bulb at the base of the stairs flickered to life, casting a jaundiced glow down into the dark. "Sarah," I whispered. "You down there?" No answer. I waited. Silence. But there was a smell. Not rot, not mold, something older. Like wet stone. Like dust and copper. The air hung heavy. I went back to bed without going down. The next morning, I asked again, "Did you open the basement door last night?" Sarah was stirring sugar into her tea. She paused mid-stir and blinked at me. "No," she said. "Why?" "It was open. Just a crack, but—" Her expression stayed neutral. "You probably didn't latch it all the way earlier." "I didn't open it at all." She didn't answer. Just sipped her tea. Eyes locked on mine for a second too long. That afternoon, I decided to go down there. The stairs groaned beneath my weight. Wooden, narrow, no railing. The basement wasn't huge, just an open space with concrete floors and old wooden beams. Storage bins lined one wall, mostly unlabeled. There were boxes, an old broken-down piano, what looked like her father's rusty tool chest, and behind it all, something I hadn't noticed before. A second door. It was built into the far wall, almost hidden behind a rack of hanging coats and an old drying rack. The wood was darker, older. There was no knob, just a keyhole. It gave me the worst feeling. A wrongness I couldn't explain. When Sarah got home, I asked her about it. "There's another room down there," I said. "Behind the coats. What's in it?" Her face paled. Just slightly. "I don't remember," she said too quickly. "Probably just more junk. My dad used to throw stuff in there when guests came over." "Do you have a key?" She shook her head. "Maybe. Somewhere." "Why?" "Just curious." That night, I woke to rustling again. This time I caught her. Sarah wasn't in bed. I sat up, heart pounding. Her pillow was still warm. I slipped into the hallway and saw the light in the kitchen was on. And there she was. She was standing in front of the open basement door, one hand on the frame, her body completely still. "Sarah," I whispered. She didn't move. I approached slowly, careful not to startle her. Her eyes were half-lidded and her lips moved silently, as if she were mouthing something, some unseen prayer or whisper I couldn't hear. I touched her shoulder gently. She gasped, not loud but sharp, like someone surfacing from water. Her knees buckled slightly. I caught her. "Are you okay?" I asked, guiding her to a chair. You were standing at the basement door." She looked at me, confused. "What?" "No. I was sleeping." "You were sleepwalking." She blinked hard, trying to process. I've never done that before." "Maybe it's stress," I said gently. "The move, the change in routine." She nodded slowly. "Yeah, probably." But I saw it, the flicker in her eyes. She didn't believe it either. The next night, it happened again. I followed her this time, didn't speak, didn't stop her. She opened the basement door and stepped down into the darkness without turning on the light. She moved slowly, like she'd walked those steps 1,000 times. Barefoot. silent. I followed 5 steps behind. She walked to the second door. And stopped. She reached for the blank wood. Her fingers traced something into the grain. Shapes, maybe letters. Then she pressed her forehead to the door and whispered, "Are you still there?" My heart stopped. She stood like that for a full minute, then turned and walked past me, not even seeing me. Back up the stairs. Into bed. The next morning, I didn't say a word. But I started searching the house for the key, because whatever was behind that door, it knew her. And I needed to know it too. Chapter 3. What the House Remembers. I searched the house top to bottom over the next 3 days. I didn't tell Sarah. Every time she left for errands or went to work, I combed through drawers, closet corners, junk boxes. I even went through the attic, where dust floated in rays of sunlight like a slow snowfall. I was looking for a key. Maybe not even a literal one. Maybe a photo, a note, anything to explain that door. Anything to explain why my wife whispered to it in her sleep. The attic was mostly old books, tax folders, forgotten Christmas ornaments, a box of yellowing baby clothes. But in a plastic tub shoved behind a wall of insulation, I found something strange. A manila folder, brittle at the edges, marked only with the name June. Sarah's mother. Inside were handwritten letters, all addressed to someone named M. None of them were signed. The ink was shaky. Some of the pages had smudges, water damage, or maybe tears. The writing wasn't exactly coherent. A mix of memory, regret, and deep paranoia. One letter stood out. The whispering is louder again. He's not gone. You can seal a room, but not what's inside it. I begged them not to build over the root. The basement door knows. I read it twice. Then a third time. When I showed Sarah the folder, her face twisted with something between recognition and grief. But she only said, "Mom wrote a lot of weird stuff at the end. She wasn't well." "She wrote about the basement," I said quietly. Sarah didn't look up. She always hated that part of the house. Said it was built wrong. I wanted to push her for more, but I could see it. Something about this was truly haunting her. And not in the way sleepwalking or dreams haunt someone. This was older, deeper, maybe even something she had forgotten on purpose. That night I made a decision. I waited until she was asleep, then took the flashlight and went into the basement alone. I brought a screwdriver and started chipping around the edges of the second door. No screws. No visible lock. Just the keyhole and the faint carvings I hadn't noticed before. Not letters. Symbols. Circles and lines intersecting like a child's map or a ritual. I pressed my ear against the wood. Nothing. No whisper. No wind. Just silence. I turned to leave. But then something moved behind me. Not a noise. A feeling. Like something shifted in the air. Like I just missed it by a breath. I turned back and found the door slightly open. I didn't open it. But it was. I pulled it open the rest of the way. The room beyond wasn't what I expected. No cold stone crypt. No hidden altar. No skeletons of buried family pets. It was a bedroom. A child's bedroom. Dusty, forgotten, but unmistakably familiar. Toys sat on a shelf. A twin bed, a lamp with moons and stars on the shade. A drawing pinned to the corkboard with the name Mikey in crayon. Mikey. My blood turned to ice. That was Sarah's older brother. The one I'd only ever heard mentioned once. He died when she was 5. Accident, she'd said, and never again. I stepped inside the room. The light from my flashlight bounced off the walls, catching on peeling stickers and the edges of books. The room wasn't dirty. It was sealed. Preserved. Like someone had locked it away, untouched, for decades. I picked up a book from the shelf. And that's when I heard it. Behind me. The voice. A whisper. Very faint. "Close it." I turned. The room was empty. But the door was slowly swinging shut. I lunged and caught it before it slammed. My heart pounded. I left the room, pulled the door shut again hard. It latched this time. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to Sarah, watching her chest rise and fall, wondering what the hell I had just walked into, wondering who the voice belonged to, wondering why that room, why Mikey's room, was locked away like a secret the whole house was built to forget. The next morning, Sarah stood at the kitchen window with a cup of tea and said without turning, "You opened the room, didn't you?" I froze. Yes. She turned slowly. Her face was pale. Her eyes looked tired in a way I'd never seen before. "I didn't want you to," she said. "Why not?" "Because once it's open again, it starts all over." "What starts over?" She just whispered. "The dreams." Chapter 4. The door never closed. The days that followed weren't normal. Not even in that new parents adjusting to a move kind of way. They were wrong. The air in the house turned heavy. Sounds felt closer than they should have been, like the creak of a floorboard upstairs echoed even if no one was home. Like the ticking of the kitchen clock slowed when you listened. Like the quiet had teeth. Sarah stopped drinking tea. Stopped cooking. Stopped humming to herself when she folded laundry. She didn't ask me about the room again. And I didn't offer. But every night now, every single night, she'd sleepwalk again. Not once. Twice. Sometimes 3 times. Each time she went straight to the basement. Not frantic. Not fearful. Just calm, slow steps. Down the creaky stairs, toward the second door. But now the door was never locked. And every time she'd open it, every time she'd stand in the doorway and just listen. She never went in. She just stood there like she was waiting for something. Or someone. I stopped trying to wake her. The first few times when I touched her shoulder, she'd recoil violently, almost like she didn't know who I was. Once, she whispered something when I gently guided her back up the stairs. "He's not gone. He's waiting." The next morning, she had no memory. But something was wearing on her. She started getting nosebleeds. Her hands shook when she tried to drink from a glass. She'd stare at the living room TV for hours without even turning it on. I started sleeping with the door to the basement bolted. But twice, I woke up and it was wide open. And Sarah was gone. Once, I found her sitting in the hallway. Not crying. Just staring at a spot on the wall. I asked her what she saw. She said, "There was something behind it when I was little. Something I couldn't explain. I think Mikey heard it first." That name again. Mikey. The brother who died in an accident. I finally confronted her. I said, "Sarah, you need to tell me what happened. What really happened?" She sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, wrapped her arms around herself, and didn't speak for what felt like forever. And then she said it. I pushed him. My stomach dropped. "I didn't mean to," she said, her voice shaking. "We were just playing near the door. He told me there were whispers coming through the wall. He said the floor was breathing. I told him to stop being stupid. He said the basement was hungry. And I told him if he was so brave, he should go in and feed it." She looked up at me, her eyes full of something I hadn't seen in her before. Shame. Then I shoved him. Not hard. Just a little. I was 5. I didn't think. He stumbled. He hit his head. He didn't scream. Just dropped. She started crying then. Quietly. Almost politely. I screamed. I remember that. I remember my mom running down. I remember blood. And I remember her not calling the police. I didn't know what to say. She said we had to protect what was left of the family. That if the house knew we were afraid of it, it would win. So she covered it up. Said it was an accident. I asked what happened to the room. She wiped her face and said, "She sealed it. She said if we could forget the room, maybe the house would forget what happened in it." And did it? I asked. Sarah just looked at me. Would I be sleepwalking into it every night if it had? That night I stayed awake. I listened. At exactly 3:11 a.m., I heard the basement door creak. I waited. Footsteps. I got up slowly. But when I opened our bedroom door, Sarah wasn't there. Not in the hall. Not on the stairs. I ran to the basement. She was inside the room, the door wide open, standing in the center of it, staring down at something I couldn't see from the hallway. I called her name. She didn't respond. I stepped into the room. The air was different, colder, thicker, like breathing underwater. And I saw what she was looking at. A small drawing on the floor, made in crayon. 2 stick figures. One bigger, one smaller, and a circle between them, black, scribbled hard until the crayon broke. The smaller figure had no face. The bigger one had a speech bubble. The word inside. Feed it. I grabbed Sarah's hand. She blinked like she was waking up from anesthesia. We left the room. I shut the door, bolted it. And that night, for the first time in weeks, she didn't sleepwalk. We slept through the night. But in the morning, there was a crayon on the pillow between us. Black, broken in half. And neither of us knew how it got there. Chapter 5. The House's Final Secret. That morning, the broken crayon sat on the pillow like a dark invitation. Neither Sarah nor I spoke about it at breakfast. The silence between us was heavy, thick with all the unspoken fears. Days passed, and the house seemed to hold its breath. No sleepwalking. No whispers. No shadows darting just out of sight. We began to think maybe, somehow, the worst was behind us. But peace was an illusion. One evening, as the sun dipped low and spilled gold across the kitchen floor, Sarah found an old box tucked away beneath the basement stairs. It was covered in dust and cobwebs, heavy with years of neglect. Inside were faded photographs, old diaries, and a folded piece of brittle paper. Sarah unfolded the paper with trembling hands. The handwriting was shaky, like her mother's letters in the attic. It was a confession, dated 30 years earlier. I sealed the door to keep the darkness in. I thought I could protect my children, but the house remembers. It feeds on secrets, on guilt, on silence. Mikey was the first to hear it. The voice in the walls, the whispers beneath the floorboards. I buried him to silence the house, but it's never been quiet. Sarah looked up, eyes wild with realization. The house, it's alive. And it's hungry. That night, we decided to face whatever was inside the basement once and for all. We gathered old tools, flashlights, and every bit of courage we could muster. With Sarah's hands tightly gripping mine, we descended the creaking stairs toward the locked door. The air grew colder with every step, the shadows stretching like fingers trying to pull us in. I put my shoulder against the door and pushed. It gave way, swinging open to reveal the small, dusty bedroom. The moonlight filtered in through a grimy window, casting pale light over the forgotten toys and peeling wallpaper. And there, in the corner, something moved. A shadow detached itself from the wall, coalescing into a small, translucent figure. A boy, pale and hollow-eyed. It looked at Sarah with a mixture of sadness and longing. "Mikey," she whispered. The ghostly boy reached out a hand, and Sarah stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she said. "I never wanted you to suffer." The figure smiled faintly, then pointed to the scribbled black circle on the floor. "It's not me it wants. It's the guilt, the secret, the fear." The house was a vessel for pain. It fed on the darkness hidden beneath smiles and silence. With newfound resolve, Sarah and I gathered the old toys and photographs. We burned them in the fireplace, whispering words of forgiveness and release. As the flames consumed the past, the house seemed to sigh, the heavy air lifting for the first time in decades. Sarah hugged me tightly. "We're finally free." But as we looked up, the basement door slowly creaked shut behind us. And this time it stayed closed.